I'm Leila Hampton. I was 34 the day my brother shattered a coffee mug at our mother's backyard birthday party and screamed loud enough for the neighbors to hear. His words cut through the breeze like glass. "Get out, you spoiled bitch. You don't belong in this family." The daisy-painted mug was our mom's favorite. It hit the concrete and broke into pieces, like something sacred being thrown away. My parents didn't speak. They just stood there as if it had all been rehearsed, like they knew this moment was coming and didn't plan to stop it. Everyone froze like we'd hit pause on real life. And I stood there staring at the wreckage, thinking, maybe this wasn't just a tantrum. Maybe it was a message meant for me before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments and tap that like and subscribe button. If you've ever had to stay calm when someone tried to humiliate you in front of a crowd, I didn't grow up expecting any of this, not from my family, not from the people, who once told me that kindness and honesty were what made a person good. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough. Our little house in St. Louis was filled with school projects taped to the fridge, spaghetti dinners on Fridays, and my Grandpa Henry's old stories about fixing up radios in his shop. When he was young, my parents worked hard. Dad ran a repair service, and Mom worked part-time at the library when I got my first job. At 14, it was cleaning folding chairs at a local hall. After wedding receptions, Grandpa Henry told me, always show up early and leave things better than you found them. And I took that to heart. Every job, every client, every step of the way. I built my event planning company from scratch out of the small retail space. Grandpa Henry left me when he passed. It had once been a radio repair shop. Now it was where I met clients, drew up design boards, and sketched out floor plans for weddings, fundraisers, conferences. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and in a city like St. Louis where big personalities often fill up the room. I made my mark by staying steady. I didn't yell or show off. I just delivered beautiful events on time and under budget. Most weeks I worked 12-hour days, drank too much coffee, and forgot to eat lunch, but it was worth it. My business was growing, and for the first time in my life, I felt like maybe my parents would finally see me not just as their daughter, but as someone they could be proud of. But pride wasn't something they gave freely. Not to me anyway. If Grayson got a new job, it was a cause for celebration. If I landed 3 contracts in 1 week, I was told not to overdo it. If Grayson needed help covering rent, they'd offer to chip in if I mentioned a tough client. I'd hear, "Well, you chose this path, Leila." I learned to stop expecting much from them, just a quiet nod here or a distracted good for you there. Even so, I kept inviting them to things, hoping maybe this time they'd show up fully, maybe they'd care. The party was supposed to be simple Mom's 63rd birthday. Just family and a few neighbors, paper lanterns in the trees and lemon bars on the dessert table. I brought a gift and helped set the table. Grayson arrived late, red-eyed and tense. He didn't even look at me until he walked right up, grabbed that mug and smashed it at my feet, yelling like I'd stolen something from him. And when I turned to my parents, hoping they'd say enough or at least ask what was going on, they just looked away, like their silence was an answer all by itself. I left without speaking, drove through the city without a plan, and ended up at Shane's place downtown. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and handed me his spare key. No questions asked. That night, I barely slept, my phone still in my hand. From the last call I made, I told myself maybe it was just a blow-up. Maybe I could move past it. But when I opened my business account the next morning, what I saw made everything click in a way I wish it hadn't. The morning after the party, I sat on Shane's couch, still in yesterday's clothes, my laptop balanced on my knees. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the soft scrape of his spoon against a cereal bowl across from me. I opened the banking app tied to my company's business account, the same one I'd used for years to manage vendor payments and client deposits. The balance flashed on the screen, and for a second I thought it hadn't loaded right. Then I blinked and looked again. It was wrong, way off. I scrolled down the transactions, my pulse starting to pick up. There were dozens of small withdrawals, 500 here, 900 there, all labeled under vague terms like consulting or miscellaneous. I didn't recognize any of them. I clicked into the details, and that's when I saw the name Grayson Hampton, listed as a secondary user on the account. I'd added him back when I first launched the company, before I had proper systems in place, back when I was juggling events and invoicing out of the same email. He'd helped me once or twice with vendor deposits, then never touched the account again. Until now. I looked up, stunned. "He's been taking money," I said quietly. "Over $40,000. Shane set his spoon down and leaned forward. "Don't call him," he said. "Not yet. If he's bold enough to steal, he's probably already covered his tracks." He was right. I needed more than anger. I needed proof. I opened my inbox, hoping something might explain what was going on. Between contract drafts and vendor messages, one email stood out sent late the night before from Carla Davis, a longtime client who ran a nonprofit I'd worked with for years. "Leila, I got a call from your brother. He said you've been under too much stress to manage the upcoming gala and offered to take it off your plate." "Just checking in, is everything all right?" I showed Shane. He didn't say anything right away. Then he nodded slowly. "He's not just stealing your money," he said. "He's trying to take your clients." I kept scrolling. Another email from a wedding coordinator, then one from a corporate client I'd recently signed. Both said the same thing. Grayson had contacted them directly, claiming I wasn't in a stable place to handle their events, offering his services instead. He was planting doubt. My heart sank. This wasn't just about money. He was trying to erase me. I thought back to the party, my parents not saying a word while Grayson shouted in front of everyone. Mom fiddling with the hem of her shirt. Dad refusing to meet my eyes. I'd written it off as shock, but maybe they weren't shocked at all. Maybe they knew. Shane reached over to the end table and handed me a small flash drive. "Start saving everything," he said. Emails, screenshots, anything with a timestamp. I got to work. I forwarded the client messages to a private folder and downloaded the bank records. As I was backing up a few files, my phone buzzed with a new voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I put it on speaker. "Hi, Leila. This is Ellen Foster. I'm the attorney who handled your grandfather Henry's estate. I have something important to discuss. Please call me when you can." Shane raised an eyebrow. "You think it's related?" "I don't know," I said. "His will was settled 2 years ago. He left me the shop. That was it." I didn't return the call right away. I wasn't ready to chase a new thread until I could hold the one in front of me. That day I kept digging. I logged into our client management software, something I rarely did myself anymore. There it was, 2 new logins from an IP address I didn't recognize, both from 2 weeks ago. Grayson had accessed the client list. The dates lined up with the withdrawals and the client calls. One by one, the pieces started to fit. He'd been planning this longer than I realized. Later that night, I found an audio file tucked in our server's call records, a feature I'd activated last year to track project details. I clicked on one dated 2 weeks back, labeled under a hotel client's name. Grayson's voice came through smooth and casual. "Leila's spread too thin," he said. "I can take this off her plate, same services, half the price." I stared at the screen, stunned. He wasn't even trying to hide it. Shane leaned over, listening. "You've got him on tape." I copied the file to the flash drive. The name on the recording, the dates, the rate cut. It was all clear. He was dismantling my business from the inside out. We sat in silence for a while. Then Shane said, "You need a lawyer." I nodded. I already knew who I'd call. Mark Ellison, someone I'd worked with once before on a contract dispute. He specialized in small business law, level-headed, discreet. I opened my laptop and drafted a short message laying out the situation and attaching the most damning screenshots. The more I looked through the account, the more I found. Tiny withdrawals labeled for supplies or vendor fees that didn't match any real invoice. Over 50 in total, spread across 3 months, never more than 1,000 at a time. Enough to avoid suspicion unless someone was really watching. I wasn't angry, not yet. Mostly, I felt cold, like the air around me had shifted, and I was still trying to adjust. Shane was quieter than usual that night. Before heading to bed, he asked, "What about your parents?" I paused. They've always favored him, ever since the divorce. He was the poor boy who needed help, and I was the one who was supposed to figure things out on my own. But do you think they knew I didn't answer right away? They didn't look surprised at the party. That's what scares me. The next morning, I called Ellen Foster back. Her voice was calm but firm. "Leila, your grandfather left a letter for you. Instructions were to hold it unless your inheritance was ever contested. I think now might be the time." We made plans to meet at her office the following day. After I hung up, I sat for a long time in Shane's kitchen, staring out the window while the coffee brewed. I wasn't sure what was in that letter. But after what I'd seen, after what I'd heard, I had a feeling it would confirm something I didn't want to believe. Something about all of them. The night before my meeting with Ellen Foster, I sat up late in Shane's living room, the soft glow of my laptop screen casting shadows across the walls. I opened the call recording folder tied to our client system, something I'd forgotten even existed until that week. Most of the files were routine, tagged with dates and client names, but one caught my eye. It was from about a month ago, and marked with the name of a charity I'd worked with for years. I clicked play. Grayson's voice filled the room. Confident, comfortable. "Leila's not in a good place right now," he said. "I can take over. Smooth transition. No need to worry." He didn't sound rushed or nervous, just sure of himself like he'd done this before. I saved the file and moved on. There was another one, same tone, different client. I kept copying them over to my USB drive. 2 files turned into 5. Each one a brick stacked against him. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how far he'd gone. I checked the sent folder on my business email and found a message I hadn't written. It was short, polite, and signed with my name, but it wasn't mine. It canceled a contract I'd spent months securing. The IP address didn't match my location. I saved a screenshot and backed it up. Shane walked in, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're still at it." I nodded without looking up. He used my account to cancel a deal. He sat beside me and stayed quiet while I kept digging. After a while, he said, "This is a lot, Leila. You okay?" I didn't answer right away. I just kept working. By the next morning, I'd pulled together enough to fill a folder, emails, audio clips, banking logs. I printed hard copies and tucked them into a binder, then slipped Ellen's voicemail into the folder as well, just in case. Her office was in a quiet brick building downtown a few blocks from where I used to run my early client meetings. She greeted me with a steady handshake, her tone professional but kind. We sat down across from each other, and she slid a sealed envelope across the table. "Your grandfather left this with strict instructions. You were only to receive it if your inheritance was ever challenged or threatened in any way," she said. "I think we've reached that point." The envelope was thick-yellowed slightly at the edges. My name was written across the front in Grandpa Henry's steady cursive. I opened it carefully, unfolding the letter inside. It was dated 2 years ago. "If you're reading this," it began, "then I'm afraid your family has shown you what they're really capable of." My eyes moved down the page. Grandpa Henry wrote about Lucas, a name I hadn't said out loud in a long time. He and I had started the business together years back. We were partners, friends, a solid team. But then, almost overnight, Lucas had pulled out, claiming bankruptcy and cutting off contact. I'd taken over the company alone, assuming he couldn't handle the pressure. But that wasn't the truth. According to Grandpa's letter, my parents had convinced Lucas to take on bad loans through a shell company tied to our family name. When he couldn't pay, they pushed him out quietly and completely. Grayson handled the paperwork. My parents funneled funds through his name. Lucas was left humiliated and broke, and I was left thinking he had abandoned me. I sat there for a long time reading and rereading those words. Ellen didn't interrupt. Toward the end of the letter, Grandpa explained why he left me the shop. "You have the strength to build something lasting," he wrote. "But if they ever come for it, don't hand it over. Make them fight for it. They won't win." He'd included a clause in the paperwork, a safety net. If my family ever contested my ownership, the shop would automatically transfer to a local nonprofit, bypassing them entirely. It was his way of protecting me from beyond the grave. I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. Why didn't he tell me any of this? He believed they'd leave you alone if he was gone, Ellen said. He didn't want you caught in the middle. As I left her office, the weight of the letter pressed against my ribs. I called Shane from the parking lot and told him what it said. It goes deeper than I thought, I said. It wasn't just me. They did it to Lucas, too. He let out a long breath. Your parents, they knew. All of it. Back at Shane's, I sat with the letter in my lap, the same letter that had once been hidden away for safekeeping. I thought about Lucas, how we'd shared late nights building event layouts and budget spreadsheets, how his name had quietly disappeared from the website after he left. I'd blamed him, but he'd been pushed. I opened my old contacts list, trying his last known number. Disconnected. I sent a message to a mutual acquaintance asking if they'd heard from him. No response. I didn't know where he was or if he'd even want to hear from me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he deserved to know the truth, too. That evening, Mark called back. He'd reviewed the documents I'd sent and asked to meet the next day. This is bigger than a personal dispute, he said. We may be looking at fraud, even criminal conspiracy. He mentioned hiring a private investigator to dig into the shell company Grandpa had named. I agreed without hesitation. But his next words hit harder than I expected. They might try to discredit you. That's what people like this do, just like they did with Lucas. If they can't control you, they'll try to paint you as unstable. I didn't respond right away. My mind flashed back to the emails Grayson had sent to my clients, calling me overworked and fragile. It wasn't random. It was strategic. The next few days were a blur of collecting evidence. I reached out to an old accountant who'd handled our books in the early days, asking for archived statements. I contacted another client Grayson had approached, confirming he'd made an offer behind my back. I documented it all: dates, emails, files, recordings. Each piece added to the shape of the truth. This wasn't just my brother acting out. This was a pattern. This was a plan. Shane stayed close by helping me sort files late into the night. At one point, he looked over and said, "You're doing the right thing." I didn't answer. I just nodded and went back to the documents. 2 weeks in, I had a binder full of evidence and a letter that tied every piece together. The truth about what happened to Lucas, the forged emails, the stolen money, and the plan to take away the one thing Grandpa Henry had left just for me. I wasn't ready to confront them yet, but I knew where I would. Not in their house, not over a phone call. In the shop Grandpa gave me, the place they thought they could take. I arrived early that morning, long before anyone else was due to show. The sun hadn't burned off the haze yet, and the air was still heavy with late summer stillness. I unlocked the front door of the shop, flipped on the lights, and stepped inside. For a moment, I just stood there. It still smelled faintly like old wood and dust, like it had when Grandpa Henry used to bring me here after school. I ran my hand along the front counter, the same one where he used to fix radios and organize invoices by hand. Now it was where I met clients and planned events. Same walls, different life. I tucked the binder of evidence into the bottom drawer and slid the letter from Grandpa into my pocket. I didn't know exactly how this was going to go, but I knew I wasn't going to let them speak over me this time. I wasn't going to stand there and take it like I had at the party. Grayson arrived first. The bell above the door rang sharp and loud. He walked in like he owned the place, jaw tight, arms crossed. A few seconds later, Mom and Dad followed. Dad gave a slight nod. Mom glanced around like she was afraid someone might see her walk in. "Thanks for coming," I said, keeping my voice steady. Grayson scoffed. "Let's just get this over with. You said it was about the business." Before I could answer, Mom stepped forward, holding a manila envelope in both hands. "We're worried about you, sweetheart. she said gently. "You've been under so much strain. Running this place on your own can't be easy." Dad added something under his breath too quiet to catch. I didn't respond. I watched her hands as she opened the envelope and slid a document across the counter. The header was stamped with a medical clinic's name. At the bottom was the signature of someone named Dr. Kessler. "It's time we talk seriously," she said. "This report outlines a few concerns. Behavior decision-making. It's nothing personal. We just think it may be best if someone else takes over for now." I stared at the paper. I'd never met that doctor. I hadn't stepped foot in any clinic like that. The whole thing was a setup. A quiet, professional-looking lie meant to take everything out from under me. Grayson stepped forward. "We're filing to have you declared unfit to manage the business. It's not an attack, Leila. It's just reality." I looked at their faces one by one. Grayson's smirk. Mom's carefully arranged sympathy. Dad's eyes glued to the floor. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the letter. Slowly, without a word, I unfolded it and laid it on the counter next to the document they'd brought. "This is from Grandpa Henry," I said. "He wrote it 2 years ago, specifically for this moment. He knew one of you would try something like this." Grayson opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "He left me this shop outright. But he added a clause. If anyone contests it, if any of you try to interfere, it goes directly to charity. Not to you, not to anyone else." Mom's hands began to tremble. She clutched the edges of the counter like she needed it to stay upright. Grayson's voice rose. "You're bluffing. That's not real. You forged that." "I didn't," I said. "It's been in his lawyer's care since the day he died." Dad finally looked up. "Let's not do this here," he muttered. "It doesn't have to get messy." I nodded once. "It got messy when you helped Grayson drain $40,000 from my account. When you stood there while he lied to my clients. When you forged a medical report and tried to use it against your own daughter." Grayson's hands balled into fists at his sides. "You don't know what you're talking about." I opened the drawer and pulled out the binder. "I do. I have everything. The bank records, the login history, the audio files. I even have the emails you sent pretending to be me. If you push this any further, I'll take it to the police and I'll take it to the press." The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that makes even the air feel heavy. Grayson stepped closer, but I didn't move. His eyes flicked toward the drawer like he might grab the evidence. I slipped the letter back into my pocket and stepped away from the counter. "Try it," I said, "and I'll call the cops right now." Mom reached out, voice shaking. "Leila, please. We're still family." I looked at her hand, then back at her face. "You had a choice. You made it." Grayson turned and walked out hard enough to make the bell above the door rattle. Mom and Dad lingered for another few seconds, as if they didn't believe it was really over. Then they followed their footsteps, slower, heavier. When the door finally closed, I exhaled. For the first time in weeks, the shop felt quiet in a way that wasn't threatening. Just still. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. This wasn't the end. Not yet. But something had shifted. The line had been drawn. And now that I'd stood my ground, I knew exactly what to do next. The morning after I confronted them, I opened my laptop and clicked through each file one last time. Every document, every screenshot, every audio clip was there, backed up and labeled. I zipped the folder and saved a copy to the desktop. Then I opened a blank email. The address belonged to Hannah Blake, a journalist I'd worked with before. She'd covered some of my charity events back when things were simpler. I always remembered how she asked smart questions and didn't pull punches. That's what I needed now, someone who wouldn't be intimidated, who would follow the truth wherever it led. "Hannah," I typed, "I've uncovered something about my family. It involves fraud, stolen money, and a forged medical report. This may be bigger than anything you've seen from me before. Can we meet?" I attached the folder and hit send. She replied in under 2 hours. We met that afternoon at a small coffee shop downtown. She was already seated when I arrived, a notepad open, half-finished latte by her side. She greeted me with a nod and motioned for me to sit. "I've read through what you sent," she said. "Leila, this is explosive." I took a breath and laid it out. Grayson's withdrawals, the fake emails, the doctor's report I never authorized, and the letter from Grandpa Henry that changed everything. Hannah asked clear, direct questions, flipping pages and jotting down notes. "You're sure you want this public?" she asked. "Once it's out, there's no taking it back." I nodded. "They tried to take everything. My business, my name. They already made it personal." She promised to verify every detail before printing. Then she stood, shook my hand, and said, "If this checks out, they won't be able to bury it." That same day, I drove to the St. Louis Police Department with my binder in hand. I was directed to a fraud unit officer named Detective Carter. He had a steady voice and eyes that didn't blink too often. I sat across from his desk and told the story again, piece by piece, handing over the recordings and financial logs. He flipped through the evidence slowly. When he got to the forged medical letter, he paused and looked up. "This one's going to matter," he said. He took notes while I talked, stopping only to ask about dates or who had access to which accounts. By the time we were done, the sun had dropped low across the windows behind him. "We'll open a formal investigation," he said. "Cases like this take time, but your documentation is solid." I thanked him, handed over a flash drive copy, and walked out feeling something close to relief. A week later, the article was printed on the front page of the St. Louis Chronicle. The headline read, "Local Family Accused of Business Fraud and Inheritance Scheme." The piece laid out the timeline clearly. Grayson's unauthorized withdrawals, the forged medical document, the fake cancellation emails, and the letter from Grandpa Henry outlining the shell company used to ruin my former business partner, Lucas. Hannah had even tracked Lucas down and quoted him in the article. He confirmed everything. They had pressured him into loans, siphoned money, and forced him out. By noon, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages poured in from clients, old friends, even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Some offered support. Some said they were shocked. One text from Carla, my longtime client, just said, "I knew you were the real deal. Keep going." But the fallout came fast. Grayson's name was scrubbed from 2 consulting websites by the end of the day. A small business group he'd recently joined released a statement saying they no longer associated with him. His last known venture, a coaching company built on fluff and buzzwords, shut down its website without explanation. I heard through a former client that he'd been dropped from several contracts. "Too risky," they said. My parents didn't call right away. But the silence didn't last long. 2 days after the article, I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was soft, strained. "Leila, we just need to talk. Please. We're still family." I didn't answer. Dad sent a text next. "We made mistakes. Let's talk." I let it sit unread. Shane showed up that afternoon holding a copy of the paper. He held it up as he walked into the shop, a grin pulling at the corner of his mouth. "You did it," he said. I shook my head. "It doesn't feel like a win yet." He leaned against the counter. "Maybe not, but it's the truth. And now the truth's out there." Over the next few days, the story spread beyond our city. The police investigation gained traction. Detective Carter called to say they'd subpoenaed Grayson's bank records and were looking into the paperwork tied to the shell company Grandpa Henry had warned me about. They were building a case slow but steady. I kept working in the meantime, planning events, meeting clients, filling my days with the kind of work I knew how to do. It helped to have something solid beneath my feet again. But every so often my phone would buzz with another message from Mom. The last one just said please. Just one conversation. I read it, then deleted it. Some things couldn't be fixed with words, not after everything that had been done. The article had been out for just over a week when the shifts started to show. At first they were subtle. I heard from a neighbor that my parents skipped their usual Saturday coffee group at the church fellowship hall. Someone else mentioned that Grayson's car was parked outside his condo all weekend, when he normally would have been out shaking hands, pitching his consulting firm to small businesses around town. Then it spread. Mom and Dad had always been fixtures in their church circle. They ran the holiday fundraisers, helped set up Sunday luncheons, hosted the occasional Bible study in their backyard. But after the article, they stopped showing up. When they did go, they sat in the back. No more invitations, no more leadership titles. A friend of mine who still lived in their neighborhood said the porch lights at my parents' place stayed off most evenings now. The curtains were drawn more often. A few families crossed the street rather than wave when walking their dogs past the house. At first I didn't know how to feel, but then Carla forwarded me an email. A client Grayson had tried to lure away had just written her back saying thanks, but I'd prefer to stay with Leila. I don't do business with people who forge documents. The town was watching, quietly, carefully, but watching. Grayson didn't reach out himself, not once. But I got a message from someone named Eric, a friend of his I barely knew. It was short, just a few lines about how this was a private family matter and how airing it out in the press was only making things worse. I deleted it. Then came the fallout I hadn't expected. A local vendor I used for floral work called to say she'd received a visit from Grayson, asking her to stop working with me and consider partnering with him. She didn't say much else, only that she told him no and that she thought I should know. That same afternoon, Shane stopped by the shop with 2 coffees in hand. He leaned against the counter and slid the cup toward me. "Grayson's not giving up, you know," he said. "But people are talking, and they're not talking about you." He was right. I hadn't lost any clients. In fact, I'd gained 2 new inquiries just that week, both from people who said they'd read the article and admired how I handled myself. But my parents, they kept trying, not directly, but through quiet signals. A card showed up at the shop one morning with no return address. Inside was a folded note in Mom's handwriting. "We still love you. Let's not forget that." I set it aside and kept working. Detective Carter called midweek to say the investigation was moving ahead. The financial records tied to the shell company matched several deposits made in Grayson's name, and the bank had turned over login timestamps that lined up with the unauthorized withdrawals. "We're getting there," he said. "Might take time, but it's holding." Hannah reached out again, too. She said the Chronicle was planning a follow-up piece, especially after hearing from Lucas again. Apparently he was willing to go on record this time. She didn't push me for a quote, just wanted to let me know the story was still alive. On Thursday, I passed by my parents' house on my way to a venue walkthrough. Their driveway was empty, porch still dark. A for sale sign was leaning against the garage wall, not in the ground yet, but visible. Later that evening, I got another text from Dad. Just one sentence. "We miss you. This isn't how we wanted things to turn out." I didn't reply. The silence wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. Shane showed up just after sunset and helped me close up the shop. As we locked the door, he looked around the space, the display shelves, the calendar board, the stack of floral samples for an upcoming gala, and said, "It's wild, isn't it?" All of this started with a birthday party. I smiled, but only a little. He was right. But we weren't at the end of it yet. There was still the investigation, still the fallout, still whatever came next. I went home that night and pulled out Grandpa Henry's letter again. The pages were soft from how many times I'd unfolded them. Read them pressed my thumb along the edges. It wasn't just a warning. It was a reminder. He'd seen who they were long before I had, and he'd trusted me to hold the line. That's what I planned to keep doing. 2 weeks after the story broke, I got a call from Detective Carter. He didn't waste time. "We've confirmed the accounts, the IP logins, and the withdrawals," he said. "We're moving forward with formal charges. Embezzlement, fraud, forgery. We'll start with Grayson." I sat down at my kitchen table, one hand around my coffee mug even though it had gone cold. He said the paperwork was already in motion and that they'd be contacting my family for statements. If my parents were tied to the shell company, as the bank records suggested, there'd be consequences there too. I thanked him and hung up, but I didn't move for a long while. That afternoon I walked to the shop. It was quiet between events, and I took the chance to deep clean. The front room swept under the cabinets, reorganized my shelving. I turned the music low and worked in silence. Every so often I'd catch my reflection in the front window. It was the same place, the same building, but I wasn't the same person who'd opened those doors years ago. The next morning my phone buzzed with a voicemail. It was Mom again. "Leila," we heard from the detective. We know what's happening. Your father's upset. Your brother is talking about lawyers. I don't want it to come to this. Please call me." I listened to it twice, then archived it. That same day, an envelope showed up at the shop, handwritten, no stamp. Inside was a letter from Dad. His handwriting was slow and uneven, like he wasn't sure what to say. He called the whole situation regrettable, said it had gotten out of hand, that everyone makes mistakes. He ended with, "We love you. You'll always be our daughter. No apology, no ownership, just a vague appeal to blood." I folded the letter and placed it in the same folder where I kept all the evidence. That weekend, Hannah's second article ran in the Chronicle. It picked up where the first one left off, outlining the charges, the investigation updates, and Lucas's full interview. He went on record with dates, documents, and his side of the story. The same shell company that had been used to siphon money from my business had also been tied to his name years before. It hadn't just been Grayson. My parents had signed off on parts of it. Hannah didn't embellish. She just reported it plainly, and people paid attention. By Sunday, a few more local groups had distanced themselves from my family. One of Dad's old service clubs removed him from their directory. A post went up on the community bulletin board asking if anyone had ever done business with Grayson. The responses were cautious, but the message was clear. Whatever protection they'd once had was gone. That Monday morning, the door to the shop opened just before noon. I looked up from my planner and saw Mom standing there holding her purse in front of her with both hands. She looked smaller somehow, her shoulders drawn in. "Do you have a moment?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded once. She stepped inside slowly, not going past the front display table. She didn't sit. She didn't ask to. "I don't know how we got here," she said. "This wasn't supposed to happen. We were trying to help Grayson. He was struggling, after the divorce, after the business failures. He needed us." I didn't interrupt. She looked around the shop, her eyes landing on the photos near the back wall. Events I'd worked, clients smiling, tables dressed in white and gold and soft candlelight. "We thought maybe you'd be fine," she said. "You always seemed fine." Then she looked at me directly. "But it wasn't fair, and we know that now. I should have said something at the party. I should have stopped him." Her voice wavered just for a moment. "We've lost a lot," she said. "Your father, he doesn't show it, but it's weighing on him. Grayson's angry. He won't talk to us. And I miss you." I waited. She didn't say sorry, not exactly, but she looked like she'd come to the edge of it. "I don't expect you to forgive us," she said. "I just wanted to say it to your face, not in a voicemail." I nodded. "Thank you for coming." She stood there a moment longer, then turned and left. The door shut gently behind her. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I just went back to my planner and picked up where I'd left off. Later that evening, Shane came by with takeout. We sat at the back table, eating off paper plates, watching the lights in the shop glow warmer as the sun set behind the window blinds. "You think that was it?" he asked. "I think they know it's not going away," I said. He nodded. "And what are you going to do?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked around the space I'd built. The shelves, the samples, the desk drawers filled with timelines and fabric swatches and client files. I thought about the shop Grandpa Henry left me, about what it had cost to protect it, about what it meant to still have it. There was one decision left, and I knew exactly how I would make it. It's been just over 3 months since I stood in this shop and told my family to leave. The shelves that once held my grandfather's radio parts now carry sample binders, ribbon spools, and thank you notes from clients who stuck with me. The space feels lighter now, like the air has shifted, like the walls finally belong to me. The investigation is still moving forward. Detective Carter called last week to say the charges are official. Grayson has retained a lawyer. My parents haven't contested anything, at least not legally. I think they know they wouldn't win. Hannah's follow-up story went live the same day I launched something new, a program I've been quietly planning since all this began. It's called Second Start. We host workshops here in the shop, after hours, helping folks who've been pushed aside by family or partners start again. Resumes, counseling referrals, a part-time job if I have one to give. It's not much, but it's real. The first person who came through the door was a young woman named Sarah. She'd had a brother who used her name to open credit cards. She said she didn't know how to move forward, only that she didn't want to go back. I hired her to help with setup for a winter fundraiser. She shows up early, works hard, smiles sometimes now. Shane still brings me coffee. He helps when I need it and gives me space when I don't. We don't talk much about the past anymore. We talk about what's next, clients, partnerships, maybe even a second location one day. We laugh more often than we used to. My parents haven't called in weeks. The last message from Mom just said, "Take care of yourself. We miss you." I saved it, but I haven't replied. Grayson hasn't reached out at all. I think that's for the best. The shop is mine now in every way that matters. The sign above the door reads, Leila's Events. But what it really means to me is something Grandpa Henry wrote in his letter. You have the strength to build something lasting. He was right, and I didn't have to become someone else to do it. I still think about Lucas sometimes. We exchanged a few emails after Hannah's article came out. He thanked me for speaking up for telling the part of the story he never got to tell. I told him I was sorry it took me so long to see what really happened. Maybe that's what healing looks like, two people choosing truth over silence. I won't pretend this didn't hurt. It did. Losing the version of family I thought I had wasn't easy, but standing up for myself, claiming the life I built with both hands, gave me back something better. My peace, my voice, my future. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love you, just know this: you don't have to stay small to keep the peace. You deserve more than that. You always have. And if you're still carrying the weight of someone else's lies, set it down. Your story isn't over yet. Take care of yourself. And if this meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll be here in the little shop Grandpa left me building something that lasts.